Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be sharing a big pile of books that I'm interested in reading for summer 2025. Now this is not an exhaustive list of books. I will be adding other titles throughout the summer, but these are the main titles that I've decided I would like to take a look at in summer 2025. Let's start out with some of the ones that I've finished reading, the ones I'm currently reading, and then the ones that I would like to read throughout the months of July and August. One of my missions in 2025 and in general is to read more French literature. Well, in June, I decided to do a reread of Alexandre Dumas' The Three Musketeers. This is my Penguin edition, and it did not disappoint. It was fun. I mentioned a while back that I discovered Alexandre Dumas and his novels when I was in high school. It was one hot, blistering summer, and my parents had a collection, a gorgeous collection, hardbacks of all of the Alexandre Dumas novels, and I started with The Three Guardsmen and worked my way up from there. Well, this was just a delight. Dumas does not disappoint. I did feel, reading it a second time through, that it could have been maybe 100 or so pages shorter. I do know that Alexandre Dumas had a team of writers that actually worked for him at different times during his writing career, and I know that he was paid by length. I don't know how many pages this is exactly. Let's take a look here. It's almost 700 pages. I feel like it would have done just fine being like 500 pages, but the thing I love about Dumas is his impeccable sense of humor. His descriptions of the young D'Artagnan and his notions of derry-do and his ethics, his code of ethics and his chivalry. It's just wonderful, and it was even more pleasant reading it the second time through. So that was delightful. The next book that I'd like to share with you that I have finished reading is The #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. Now, I did mention in a recent video that I had acquired an almost complete collection of the #1 Ladies Detective Agency books. I'm only missing 4 titles, and this was just a joy. I had read it once before, but I'm just so happy to pick it up again. It's like greeting an old friend that you haven't seen in a long time. The first section of this book introduces you to Precious Ramatswe. It tells you about her upbringing, her youth, her father, and how she came to have the values, morals, and ethical code and sense of justice that she had. This is a cozy book, but many of the characters, including Precious, do undergo great hardship. So even though it's cozy, I wouldn't ever write it off as trivial. There are a lot of hardships in this book, but the way it's handled is just so kind. Alexander McCall Smith, he tells the story in such a tender way, and in some sections it's quite poetic. The stories move along very quickly. It's kind of a collection of braided stories, and I would say if your goal is primarily to have like a police procedural that's very gritty and it has a very fast, swift-moving plot, and things are happening on every page and there's cliffhangers, this may not be the book for you because it doesn't have one overarching narrative where you're trying to solve a crime and there's a denouement at the end, or denouement. Instead, it is a bunch of braided kind of slice of life stories that overlap each other. And you get to know the characters in Habrone, where she lives. It's just delightful. It is a different kind of mystery. They solve like little mysteries, but the main important thing that you're learning is not who done it, but rather how you should live. And it's just a real triumph. It's full of resilience and resilient characters. I absolutely love it. And my son and I recently enjoyed watching the single season that was brought to television a while ago. It's a shame it was only one season. We both really wish there were more episodes to watch. It was so well done. But in any event, yeah, the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. And I'm looking forward to reading the other titles in the series periodically, just as I feel like having a lovely, delightful read and revisiting Gaborone in Botswana. The book that I am currently reading and that I am also finding to be just a delight is Miss Benson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce. I had never read this book before. It serves the double purpose of not only being a great story, but as you know, I am in the middle of my In Case You Missed It reading challenge, where I am trying to read books from the years 2012 up through 2025 because I want to read some more modern books mixed in with all of my classic and vintage choices, just to keep myself well-rounded. And this certainly ticks the box on that one because this was published in 2020. This is a book about a sort of spinster lady named Marjorie Benson. It's 1950. She's teaching in a school and is miserable. The girls make fun of her. They pass notes mocking her and drawing pictures of her. And she decides to chuck it all in and go find the golden beetle of New Caledonia. New Caledonia is located sort of in the vicinity, I believe, of New Zealand, and there's a mountainous region in the north of the island where this golden beetle is said to be found, or she presumes it's going to be found there. And her assistant is a total opposite of her in personality, named Enid Pretty, and she's kind of a bombshell and comes across as being kind of dim-witted, but I don't think she's really that way. And it's just been so much fun. There is a kind of sinister subplot in this story that does involve somebody who has a rather nasty demeanor. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about the disability representation here and the mental health challenges, the way that's being presented. It's the one thing I would say about it is that it's kind of strange to go from very funny scenes of hilarity and comic relief and then suddenly switch back to something that's kind of sinister and psychological and in some ways disturbing me because they continually use the word retard, and there's also a great deal of fat shaming. And I know that that word and that practice were both probably more common in 1950 than today, but it is just to be fair in my criticism, I'm loving it. It's delightful, but every once in a while there is kind of a slap in the face with the fat shaming and the use of derogatory language to describe someone who has some mental health issues. So I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. I'm going to have to ponder that a bit, but I'm loving it. Otherwise, it's really, really fun. As you can see, currently I'm about 65% of the way through. I hope to finish it within the next 2 days. Another book that I plan on reading this summer, 2025, is Julia and the Shark by Kiran Millwood Hargrave with illustrations by Tom DeFreston. And I've been wanting to read this book for ages. I love the colors, the gray, black, white, and yellow. I love it when books have kind of a graphic, minimalist, simple quality like that, where there's black, white, charcoal gray, and then maybe like one or at the most two other bright colors, and that's how Tom DeFreston's illustrations have been done here. The inside end pages are beautiful. I'll just read you what it says on the back here. My name is Julia. This is the story of the summer I almost lost my mum and found a shark older than trees. Don't worry though, that doesn't spoil the ending. And let me see if I can just show you some of the illustrations in here. Love it. I have read a couple titles by Kiran, Millwood, Hargrave, and I always love them. Here's the shark. So many good ones. Let's see if we can find one more here. Here's one with a lighthouse. So Kiran, Millwood, Hargrave and Tom DeFreston are actually partners in real life, and so they had partnered together professionally to produce Julia and the Shark. And so it's about a little girl named Julia. She's 10 years old. She loves the mysteries of the ocean and marine biology, just like her mother, who is a scientist. And her family is spending the summer on a remote island. And her mother is searching for the Greenland shark, and Greenland sharks are very elusive and very, very old. And so she's looking for it, but then I'm not quite sure what the catalyst event is in this, but something happens and it becomes a different sort of journey. And I think Julia goes off to prove that the shark is real and that she's not just inventing it or something like that. I know it's something along those lines, but I've been wanting to read another Kiran, Millwood, Hargrave title for quite a while now, and I'm truly looking forward to Julia and the Shark. And then the next series of books that I'm going to show you are all books that would make lovely nightstand reading for the summertime. First up, I have two gorgeous, gorgeous editions from Penguin. They're part of the F. Scott Fitzgerald hardcover library, and it is the 100th anniversary of The Great Gatsby, and I decided to invest in a few books by F. Scott Fitzgerald because I do want to collect this particular series. They all have lovely designs on the cover in geometrics and gold foiling, and I don't think that the camera is doing it justice here. They are just beautiful, and they're beautiful to touch as well. They're matte books, so they don't have that velvety kind of cover. I really dislike those. I have kind of a sensory issue about that velvety touch, suede touch stuff. So I like this because it's just plain paper and it's matte, except it's got this metallic foiling on it. So I love that. And so yeah, The Great Gatsby, of course, is a classic story. And at the back we have, so we beat on, boat against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. I may get to a reread of this, but I did want to acknowledge the fact that it was the 100th anniversary of The Great Gatsby by starting to collect the F. Scott Fitzgerald volumes. And I'll definitely get to this at some point, if not in the next 2 months, then over the course of the next year. I would love to do a reread of this. I, of course, read it in high school and again in college. I don't think I've ever appreciated it as much as I could. I was never a huge F. Scott Fitzgerald fan. In fact, more so than his novels, I've enjoyed his short stories. And to that end, I also had decided to pick up Tales of the Jazz Age, which is another one in this gorgeous Penguin collection. And I've really enjoyed listening and reading some of his short stories, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, The Cut Glass Bowl, and Bernice Bobs Her Hair. So, and then in another collection that I'll be getting soon, there is the story The Jelly Bean. And I love all of those. So I do appreciate F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing. I just think I need to do a sort of a reread of The Great Gatsby to appreciate it even more. Continuing on with some of the just sort of lovely bedside table books for summer, I do have this book, which is edited by Melissa Harrison. It's Summer, an anthology for the summer seasons. And this is not poetry. These are just short little snippets of nature essays and essays about summer. The beginning of summer, the height of summer, the end of summer, when harvest is going to begin, and all of that. I think my favorite pieces that I've read so far in here are ones by Thomas Hardy, the poet Edward Thomas, and then also R.F. Langley. R.F. Langley spent most of his adult life noticing nature and writing journal entries. I heard his name for the very first time from the author Helen MacDonald when I took a workshop with her at Breadloaf in Vermont, and I was in her nature writing summer group, and she recommended R.F. Langley, and we had to read some of his journal entries and comment on them in class. And I've gone on from there and gotten a few of his books, and I was pleased to see some of his work in here. He notices nature on such a close, precise level. He will follow a beetle scurrying across a rock or going very slowly across a stone wall, and just devotes all of his attention, and you feel like you're in another world when you read his work. It's lovely. So I am enjoying this and just kind of browsing it and picking it up for little snippets here and there, keeping this one next to my bed on my nightstand. And then additionally, I know hardly anything about these, but when I saw these books online, I immediately snapped up this one, and I have the other two in my wish list. Have you heard of these titles? I have not. This is called The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. It is by Sun Mi Huang. It says it's an international bestseller. This is the story of a hen named Sprout. She is not content to merely lay eggs on command, only to have them carted off to market. She has higher dreams of what she wants her life to be. And so it has been called an anthem for freedom, individuality, and motherhood. And so I am doing a reading of healing fiction from South Korea, from Japan, from China, from all over. I believe that Sun Mi Huang is from South Korea. I believe that is correct. Yes, she is. She was born in 1963. And there are actually several books that she has written which have illustrations on the cover like this. And I don't know, something about it absolutely just grabbed me. People say it calls to mind books like Charlotte's Web. So I'm eager to find out what this is about. It's just a novella. It's not very long. I should be able to read this in a day or so. The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. Then in July, it's going to be Jane Austen July. I have participated every year. I participated actually the year before I started a YouTube channel, and I've been participating every year. This year, however, I had been under the impression that people were going to be reading Mansfield Park, and I was pretty excited about that. As it turns out, the group read, the main selection is Emma. I hate to say it, but Emma is actually my least favorite of Jane Austen's novels. I know I'm in a minority there. I know people love Emma. I don't feel that way. And I'm not sure I really want to, because I have so many books on my TBR. I just don't know if I want to devote time to reading Emma, which is not my favorite Jane Austen. In the meantime, though, I've been looking at the length of Mansfield Park, and I do have, again, so many other books that I definitely want to get to. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to Mansfield Park, but I will listen to it. I have it on Audible. I have some very good recordings on Audible of all of the Jane Austen novels. So I may enjoy Mansfield Park while I'm driving around, running errands, things like that. And then additionally, I will be reading another book, which is a nonfiction book, and this is a gorgeous, gorgeous hardcover. This is Jane Austen's bookshelf, The Women Writers Who Shaped a Legend by Rebecca Romney. Look at this cover. I am a fool for foil. I know, bright and shiny. Who knew? It's just a lovely, lovely cover. And this is all about, it's a nonfiction book about all of the writers who Jane Austen would have heard of and read and who probably inspired her own writing. Some of them I definitely did know about already and have read some of their work, such as Frances Burney. I would love to read more Frances Burney, though. I'd love to read her journals. And then additionally, I tried to read some Maria Edgeworth a year or two ago. I didn't care for that as much. But there are a lot of other women authors in here. Anne Radcliffe, Charlotte Lennox, Hannah More, Charlotte Smith, Elizabeth Inchbald, and Hester Lynch Thrill Piozzi. So a lot of others to choose from, and it's just like mini bios about, not so many, pretty substantial bios about their lives and their works. And what I love about it is in the back you do get their bibliographies, which I think is marvelous. And even though it looks like a super long read, a lot of this is actually notes. So I don't believe it's actually that long of a read, probably more around 325 pages. So this is a wonderful investment, I believe, for anyone's Jane Austen library. Time will tell. We shall find out. So I am participating in Jane Austen July, but probably with a nonfiction choice. I do also have a behemoth of a book, which also fits into the Jane Austen July theme, and that is a coffee table book I will attempt to lift up here, and that is Style and Society, Dressing the Georgians by Anna Reynolds. Here is that book. I've been wanting this for a long time. I believe I first saw this. I can't remember if it was Lil of Lil's Vintage World. I think it was. I think it was Lil of Lil's Vintage World. However, there is a possibility that it was Claire Fenby. So I'm not quite sure which of the two of you it was, but thank you. Love both of your channels. This is just a fashion book, and you know I'm a sucker for the history of fashion and makeup and all of that through the ages. I've shown you a number of my fashion books, so I had to have this. This was a birthday present that I have been holding out on and not sharing with you. It is just, look at the inside end page, first of all. I'm probably going to knock my microphone off showing this to you. I'll show you the back cover of this. When Jane Austen July comes around, maybe I'll do a walkthrough of this book, put it on a table downstairs, and be able to share it with you in a more appropriate way. But here, I'll just open it up and show you one thing here. But it's just all about Regency fashion. So look at this. I mean, full color, very heavy, and just lovely. So, Style and Society, Dressing the Georgians. Also in July, I will be participating for the second year in a row in Summerween, which is a readathon devised by Gabby of Gabby Reads, and love her channel. She's very much into horror and thrillers and other kinds of speculative writing. And the premise of that is to read a book in the middle of the summer that gives you Halloween vibes. I may go the classic route with this, I'm not sure. If I do decide to go with a classic older vintage story, I may go with something like Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree. Look at that cover, which is a very short book, but is supposed to be very good. That's a very Halloween-y cover. And I do enjoy Ray Bradbury. I haven't read that much Ray Bradbury, so I may go for that one. If I decide to read a more modern book, I may choose Ghost Camera, which is a collection of stories. Ghost Camera is the main story, and then there's, I think, and then there are other short stories in here. Or Ghost Camera maybe is like a full-length novel, and then there are some short stories added at the end. That may be it. Don't know much about this, so I'm just going to look at the back here. When Janine finds an abandoned Polaroid camera, she playfully snaps a photo without a second thought, but there's something wrong with the image. A ghostly figure stands in the background watching her, fixated on her, moving one step closer with every picture she takes. Desperate, Janine shares her secret with her best friend, Bree. Together they realize the camera captures unsettling impressions of the dead, but now the ghost seems to be following the two friends, and with each new photo taken, a terrible danger grows ever clearer. So last year I read my very first novel by Darcy Coates, and you know, when I did Summerween, I thought, oh, you know, I'll read some good vintage classics like Psycho and a few others, a few old ghost stories by classic writers, and then I'll throw in a modern book, but I won't enjoy it very much, I'm sure, because it's modern. Well, was I wrong? I loved it, and that was a book by Darcy Coates, and so I am so excited to read another Darcy Coates. There are some other titles that I do have in my TBR pile that may also be in the pile of possibilities, but this is a strong contender right now. So that is called Ghost Camera. And then another pursuit that I would like to engage in this summer is to read some classic adventure books. More on that later in a special video that will be devoted to adventure books. But for now, some of the pile of possibilities, I'm not guaranteeing that I'm reading all of these, but I may read one of these for my, you know, August adventure challenge or summer adventure challenge. So some of the possibilities are the Scarlet Pimpernel, which would also fit in well with my desire to read more French literature. Or I might read Hatchet by Gary Paulsen. Just picked up this copy based on a suggestion from Heather at Waterbear Reads. I had heard about this book many years ago, but never read it. And because she praised it so highly, I thought I would give it a go. So that's in the pile of possibilities, Hatchet. And then also some older classic choices. One of the authors that I really have never read, except for his poetry, believe it or not, is Robert Louis Stevenson. And so I had picked up this copy of Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. You know, I've read A Child's Garden of Verse. Some of my favorite poems in the world are in that book. And but I've never read Kidnapped. I've never read Treasure Island. I've seen adaptations of them, but never read them. And so this is from Seawolf Press, and it has some lovely old illustrations in it. And I looked at many, many different possible copies of Kidnapped and decided that this was the one I wanted to go with. Look how beautiful. It gives you the lovely illustrations of an antique volume on fresh new printed paper. And these have illustrations by Lewis Reed, and it's from Seawolf Press. So yeah, I am really looking forward to perusing Kidnapped. And then in addition, to go along with that, a nonfiction book that I'll be looking at is called A Wilder Shore, The Romantic Odyssey of Fanny and Robert Louis Stevenson. So this is their life story. They were married to each other, and it just sounds so fascinating. It's by Camille Perry, and oops, I have lots of things in here. From their first encounter in France in 1876, Fanny and Louis's partnership transcended societal expectations to become a literary union that was progressive, eccentric, and tempestuous, but always animated by a profound mutual respect. It sounds adventurous, it sounds exciting, and it sounds fascinating. And Robert Louis Stevenson, I know, had illness throughout his life, and I'll be interested to know how he coped with that and all of these different climes and locations around the world, and how he and his wife got along and how they supported each other. So that is A Wilder Shore. If I have time, which I won't, but let's just pretend that I will, I may also delve into some other adventure titles. I'll be doing a separate video on adventure, but another book that I picked up from Seawolf at the same time was King Solomon's Mines, and that is by H. Rider Haggard. And I believe this is one of the Alan Quatermain stories, and this is supposed to be, you know, penultimate quintessential adventure, and you know, it was written in a time frame which was of its age, you know, so you're going to find certain things in these books that would not fly today. But as an adventure story, I think it's supposed to be just crackerjack, and so I'm looking forward to it. Here's one of the illustrations from the front of that, and that is an illustration by, I don't know if it's pronounced Paget or Paget, Walter. Did he do Sherlock Holmes illustrations? I don't remember, but we will find out. Anyway, looking forward possibly at some point to King Solomon's Mines. So then another book which is focused on adventure that I would love to get to this summer, if I have time, is a new nonfiction release coming out in July. It's being released in July, I think July 1st, and I have pre-ordered this. It is The Beast in the Clouds, the Roosevelt Brothers' Deadly Quest to Find the Mythical Giant Panda. And I am so excited about this. It's by a woman called Natalia Holt, and I love Teddy Roosevelt's exploits and adventures. A few years ago, I brought you River of Doubt by Candace Millard, one of my favorite nonfiction adventure books, and that is about Teddy Roosevelt searching the River of Doubt, you know, to find a city and gold and all of this in the jungle. And I'm hoping this one will be just as exciting. There's nothing I love better than vintage turn-of-the-century adventure. I don't love the colonialism that is inherent in that, but I do love the adventure part of it. So I'm going to look at my notes down here so I can read you this description. During the 1920s, dozens of expeditions scoured the Chinese and Tibetan wilderness in search of the panda bear, a beast that many did not believe existed. When the two eldest sons of President Theodore Roosevelt sought the bear in 1928, they had little hope of success. Together with a team of scientists and naturalists, they accomplished what a decade of explorers could not, ultimately introducing the panda to the West. In the process, they documented a vanishing world and set off a new era of conservation biology. That's one of the things I really enjoy about the Roosevelt family story, Teddy Roosevelt and you know, his relatives, is that even though they sort of, blasted into these locations around the world and asserted themselves and wanted to, quote unquote, discover things, they did do a lot of good in their time, and forwarded various environmental causes and land preservation and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to this, and that gets launched on July 1st, and I will be reading it. You know, I also feel like 2025 is my year to re-enter my fantasy, science fiction, and speculative fiction eras. When I was in my teenage years and into my early 20s, I loved fantasy and science fiction. I read Alice in Wonderland, I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, I read books like The Mists of Avalon, I read fairy tales, I loved world building, I was there for it. And recently, with so many depressing and existential events happening in our country and around the world, I'm finding myself more and more drawn to fantasy once again. I'm having this sort of longing once again for quests and queens and journeys and slaying dragons and, facing the darkness, the dark woods and all of that. So some of the speculative titles that I may end up reading, but I'm not sure. I do have some science fiction books I've had on my shelves forever that I've never shared with you and that I've never actually gotten to. One of those is The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham, and I love this particular set of editions. So The Day of the Triffids, I also have narrated on Audible by Bill Nye. That would be something, wouldn't it? So I may listen to that, or I may pick up this book if I have time for that. But recently I did just start a folk and fairy tale club with my sister and my sisters-in-law, and so it's just like a little family book club that we're doing, and the focus of that is to read each season, read one traditional tale or story or myth. It could be a fairy tale, it could be something from folklore, it could be a fable. So we're going to read, take one story, one figure, and read the traditional classic telling of that person or story or character, and then do a modern retelling. So it's basically like 2 books per season. Now, some of the possible choices for that were things like something called Spindle's End from Robin McKinley. I had never heard of Robin McKinley before this, but I was able recently to pick up this lovely 3-volume collection of her paperbacks, and Spindle's End is one of the paperbacks in there. And this is actually a retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story, and it's quite a chunker, so I'm not sure if I will get to that, but I do love the cover. And I was quite interested to learn that these 2 other books that come in this set are Newbery Award finalist and winner. The Newbery honor is The Blue Sword by Robin McKinley. Have no idea what that's about. And it's a companion volume which won the Newbery Award, and that is The Hero and the Crown by Robin McKinley. I have no idea who Robin McKinley is. I don't know what these are about, but I'm reading Newbery Award winners and runners-ups and honor books and so forth, and I am reading fairy tale retellings and fantasy stories, so I am there for it. I am there for all of it. I think the book that we have decided to read as a group in our little family book club is Circe by Madeline Miller, and I have gotten this secondhand edition with this gorgeous sort of burnished cover. Look at the end papers on this one. It's a beautiful edition. I've been wanting to read Circe forever, so we are going to be looking into some classic Greek myths and learning about Circe and her interactions with different characters such as Odysseus, and then reading the modern retelling by Madeline Miller. Some folks are also getting The Song of Achilles, and they're going to read both of them this summer. I am committing to reading Circe because I have so many other books to read as well, but really looking forward to this, and I think this edition is so beautiful. So beautiful. Look at that. So, yeah. Another fantasy book I am really curious to know more about is one called Paladins Grace, which is by T. Kingfisher, and it is the first book in the Saint of Steel Chronicles. And I have not read any T. Kingfisher books yet, but I just fell in love with the covers of these, so I know it's impulse purchase, but I will also read you the description for this one. Stephen's god died on the longest day of the year. 3 years later, Stephen is a broken paladin, living only for the chance to be useful before he dies, but all of that changes when he encounters a fugitive named Grace in an alley and witnesses an assassination attempt gone wrong. Beset on all sides by spies and poisoners, while a cryptic killer stalks one step behind. From the Hugo and Nebula award-winning author of Swordheart and The Twisted Ones comes a saga of murder, magic, and love on the far side of despair. So it sounds wonderful. Will I get to it? I don't know. I'm definitely getting to Circe, and then if I have time for any other fantasy or sci-fi titles this summer, I will definitely look into those. Okay, we are on the home stretch. In August, I am looking forward to a couple of personal reading challenges. I'm doing Read Around the World, and that coincides with Books in Translation Month, which I believe is also August. So one of the books that I would really love to have time to get to in the month of August is The World That Was Ours by Hilda Bernstein. This is published by Persephone Books. We love our Persephone books, and this one has a beautiful cover. I believe this is memoir. It's nonfiction, and it is published to coincide with the 40th anniversary of the Rivonia trial, which saw the imprisonment of Nelson Mandela. And Hilda Bernstein's husband was also tried, but he managed to escape to England. And I believe this is just about like her everyday life during the tenseness of this trial. And like everyday events, like doing dishes and driving to get groceries and things like that, while this huge, earth-shattering, sea change moment of a trial was happening. And back in college, when I was getting my master's degree, one of the classes I took was on apartheid and South Africa. And so I was very much into it when I was a grad student, and I'm very much looking forward to reading The World That Was Ours by Hilda Bernstein. I haven't received it yet, but it is on its way. And then additionally, some of the other titles I may investigate. I've been threatening to read this forever, and I truly hope I make this happen this summer. And that, I love my Eva Ibbotson. I've been so into Eva Ibbotson ever since I first saw The Morning Gift on a book site, a bookseller's book site, and said, what is that? And then I learned about Eva Ibbotson and got all of her books. They're all back here. This is a children's book called The Star of Kazan. I love this particular cover for The Star of Kazan. And this is about a maid called Annika who lives at a grand house in Vienna. She loves the other servants as if they were her family, and she adores the magnificent, glittering city. There's only one thing Annika longs for, the mother who abandoned her when she was a baby. So when a beautiful aristocrat arrives at the grand house to claim her, Annika feels like she's walked into a dream, but things are not as they seem, and Annika learns about life. As the story goes on, the dark and crumbling castle echoes with secrets and lies, and as Annika unravels the truth, she finds herself in terrible danger. So I love the lyrical quality of Eva Ibbotson's writing, and I can't wait to get to this. Ooh, do you hear that rain out there? It's been thundering and lightning, and the rain has just been pitching down, and the light has gotten bright and then dark, bright and dark, and now suddenly It's crashing rain out there, but I'm going to persist and keep going. Another book that I would also like to get to in the month of August for the reading and translation challenge is Tsotsi by Athol Fugard. And this was also a recommendation from Heather at Water Bear Reads. And ever since she talked about it on her channel, I've really been wanting to read this. And I believe this was a movie, and it may have actually even been playing at an independent cinema art house that I used to work out at. Because I can still see sort of the movie poster in my head. I'm pretty sure they made a movie out of this. It was a while ago, but so I would love to read this. This is part of a series that looks really fascinating to me. It's called The Canons. I don't know if you can see that, but they have a lot of interesting looking titles in that series. So check out The Canons from Canongate. So that is Tsotsi. I'm going to be reading On the Banks of Plum Creek. I've been doing one book per year, doing a reread of all of the Laura Ingalls Wilder books. This year I'm on the Banks of Plum Creek, so I'm looking forward to that. I will also be continuing on with my Nancy Drew reads, and we'll be bringing you an exciting Nancy Drew Girl Sleuths video in the next few months. And I'm trying to get up to number 15 before I do that, and this is number 14, so I'm almost there. And my next book up to read is The Whispering Statue. This is a more recent edition of this. This is not one of the older editions with the original text. This was definitely a rewritten edition. I think it's from 1970, but I don't remember The Whispering Statue at all. So I'm really looking forward to a reread of this. And finally, I am doing a buddy read of a book I had never heard of. I'm doing a buddy read with a friend of mine, and it is The Ministry of Fear by Graham Greene. Look at this beautiful, beautiful picture. Can't wait for that. And this sounds very strange. The only thing I've read by Graham Greene is Brighton Rock. I read that in high school or college. I think college. I didn't like it. But we're going to give this one a try because it just sounds so strange. It's supposed to be this really cool suspense story. It takes place in the summer. It involves a man called Arthur Rowe. And when Arthur stumbles across a charity festival, he is overwhelmed with nostalgia and longing for the innocence of his youth. Here he can forget the Blitz for an afternoon. So it takes place during World War II. A misunderstanding means he wins a cake that was never meant for him. And so he wasn't supposed to win this cake, but it's kind of like foisted on him, like, here, take this cake fast. And it embroils him into this dark path, a world of spies, violence, and deception that it will be almost impossible to escape. So it sounds very suspenseful. It's set in World War II. I have seen the movie The Third Man, which was based on a novel by Graham Greene, and I loved that. It was Orson Welles, Joseph Cotten. The cinematography is very strange and eccentric, and the music is very memorable from that. It's like dulcimer or mandolin music or something like that. And so yeah, The Ministry of Fear. So I am looking forward to reading this as a buddy read. By goodness, that was a lot of books. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of these, and this isn't even all. Here is a page that has little thumbnails of all of the other sort of tangent books that interest me in conjunction with these books. Can you even believe it? I will never get to all of these. Of course I won't, but it's fun to imagine that you can. I really am more interested in just choosing the ones that in the moment captivate me and get my attention and give me a sense of awe and wonder that I can just lose myself in. So if I don't even get through a quarter of these, that's fine. I'll get to them at some point. I just want to enjoy them and get lost in the worlds of each individual story. So, but these are just all possible reads. I'd love to know what you're reading. Are you going to be reading for any of these upcoming summer challenges like Jane Austen July, Summer Ween? Do you want to read any adventure books with me? Do you want to read any healing fiction? So I hope you're having a wonderful week. I hope it's not pitching rain where you are, or thundering or lightning, and that you are dry, safe, well-fed, and warm. And we will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.